Chapter 12. In the Ghetto. I go outside to practice kick-ups, but my thoughts keep drifting to the girl who stole the boots. I can still hear the sound of the rotan slicing through the air, the sound the girl made as it left red stripes on her skin. I know the dragon must have paid her to steal the boots for his brother. It's too much of a coincidence for the dragon not to be involved, but something still doesn't seem to quite add up. My kick-ups aren't adding up either. The ball bounces on the ground again, throwing up a little puff of dust. I wipe the sweat from my face. I just can't concentrate. Football is a lonely game to play on your own, and I know that Ushton, as my sworn enemy, and Fakri and Wadodo, not much better, I can't afford to fall out with Roshi. I decide to visit Roshi's apartment. I take my football in case he wants to train, and Grandma gives me a bag of pumpkin seeds to share with him. I dribble the ball all the way, dodging people and piles of rubbish. At one point, I have to hurdle a bin that's been tipped over. There's a trail of litter across the road, and a few cats and children pick at the empty cans and packets. They don't even look up as I race past. When I reach Roshi's, I hide the pumpkin seeds behind my back and knock on the door. After a few seconds, I hear someone shuffling on the other side. Then it goes quiet. I'm about to knock again when the door suddenly opens and Roshi's mum looks down at me with a frown. Her hair hangs in greasy strands and her face is wrinkled and yellow like old paper. "What is it?" she says. "What do you want?" Her breath smells awful. "It's me," I say. "Budi, Roshi's friend. I've come to see him." She looks down at the football beneath my foot and shakes her head. "You know he's too old to play silly games like football. He's the man of the house now. Haven't you got other friends you could play with instead?" I shrug. Football is not a silly game. Then I remember the pumpkin seeds and offer the open bag to Roshi's mum. "Would you like a pumpkin seed, Ibu?" I ask. She peers into the bag and quickly lifts it out of my hand. She starts splitting the seeds between her teeth and spitting the shells onto the ground. "Now go and tell him you're here," she says. I reach out my hand to take the bag back, but she turns away into the gloomy apartment and disappears from sight. She leaves the door open and I can see that the room is a mess. It looks as though someone has emptied a bin onto the middle of the floor. After about a minute, she comes back to the doorway, scratching her elbow. The bag of seeds is nowhere to be seen. "He's not in. He must be at the dump." Then she closes the door. I start dribbling in the direction of the dump, but I keep the ball close to me. The dump is surrounded by slums, and the people here live by different rules. Roshi says they ask 3 questions whenever they find something. Can I eat it? Can I sell it? Can I burn it? And the dark shapes huddled in the doorways would probably take one look at my football and answer yes to all 3. As I get closer to the dump, the buildings seem to shrink until they are little more than blackened huts, patched together with bits of corrugated metal and plastic sheeting. I pass a naked baby wailing on a piece of cardboard, but no one pays any attention. A murky canal runs from the dump into the slums, and I have to pinch my nose against the stench. I notice a group of old men squatting over the water's edge, and further downstream, a kid wades after plastic bottles that can be sold by the kilo. And I pick up my football just in case it rolls into the water and jog the rest of the way. The dump is where the city piles all its rubbish, and it smells even worse than the canal. Luckily, I spot Roshi by the gate, so I don't have to go inside. "What are you doing here?" he asks. He looks really surprised to see me. "Your mum sent me. I went to your apartment to see if you wanted to train, and she said I'd find you here." I suddenly notice the black rubbish bag in his hand. "Why have you got that?" He looks down at the bulging sack in his filthy hand. Something has pierced through the bottom. and every few seconds it drips, leaving a dark splash on the dusty road. They wouldn't let me dump it, he says. The man said I've been coming too often, even though I haven't been here in weeks. I think he's confusing me with someone else. Well, can't you leave it by the gate? I ask. Roshi looks around. I don't think so. I'll have to take it home and try again tomorrow. We walk back to his apartment. As we pass the canal, I pinch my nose again, but Roshi's free hand stays by his side. The streets are darker now, and it's only when we pass a fire on the pavement that I can see Roshi beside me. The rest of the time I can only hear the rustling of the bag as it brushes against his leg. Roshi, what's going on? It feels as though everyone is becoming my enemy. Even you seem different. What's happening? Someone splashes petrol onto a fire, and in the bright flash I see how tired he looks. Is it because Barcelona are ahead of us in the table, I ask? If it is, then don't worry, because I know we can still win the league. It's a long season. Roshi makes a noise, but I can't tell whether it's the rustling of the bag or a sigh. Oh, no, Buddy, he says. It's got nothing to do with football. Well, what is it then? Oh, I'm just bored of it all. Bored of what? Of everything. Working in the factory, sharing a room with my mum and sisters. It feels like I'm constantly waiting for something that's never going to happen. Well, it could be worse, I say. What would you do if you didn't have a job at all? What if you lost your job like that girl who was caught stealing? Things would be a lot worse then. We arrive outside Roshi's apartment, and he puts the bag down against the wall. Come on, he says. I don't feel like going inside just yet. We walk around the corner to a tiny courtyard that's lit by a bulb above a brown door. I pass the ball to Roshi, and he starts doing kick-ups. I wash the ball, and Roshi loops it from one foot to the other. Do you really think that girl stole those boots? He asks, concentrating on the ball. Of course. The foreman said she'd been boasting about it, which is a really stupid thing to do, in my opinion. And the dragon said he would pay someone to do it if I didn't. It makes sense. But don't you think it's a bit of a coincidence that lots of people were jealous of her being so pretty? She wasn't very popular with some of the women. What do you mean? I mean that lots of people probably wanted to get rid of her. So you don't think she did it? Roshi almost loses control of the ball, but manages to keep it off the ground. No, I don't, he says. I know she didn't. How do you know? I ask. I just know. Roshi loops the ball over and I control it on my chest. What do you think you'll be doing in 10 years' time? He asks. Playing for Real Madrid, obviously. Maybe I'll be captain. Roshi laughs. Ha! Do you think you'll be able to get me a season ticket? Of course. I'll get one for you and Mum and Dad and Grandma. We'll all move to Spain. Well, that sounds good to me. What number will you be? 11, unless Kieran Wakefield is still in the team, which he probably will be. In that case, I'd have to pick something else. Maybe 111. I lose concentration, and the ball bounces in the dust. The light bulb above the door buzzes and flickers. How about you, I ask. What will you be doing 10 years from now? Roshi nudges the ball against one of the concrete walls, alternating from right to left foot. I don't know. He smiles as though he's about to say something else, but instead he just repeats, I don't know. We start doing kick-ups again, but after a few minutes the bulb goes out completely and we're forced to stop. I should be getting home, Roshi says. Mum will want to know where I've been hiding. We walk back to his apartment, but just before he opens the door, he stops and turns to look at me. Thanks for coming to see me, Woody. You're right. Things could be a lot worse. He smiles and disappears inside. As I turn to leave, I notice a trail of dark spots leading to Roshi's door. The bag of rubbish has gone. The streets are empty and quiet. I turn my pockets out to show I'm not worth robbing. Occasionally, someone drives past on a scooter, or I hear people arguing in one of the buildings, but otherwise it feels as though I'm alone in the city. As I get closer to home, there is enough light to dribble the rest of the way. I race along the pavement, twisting and turning among imaginary defenders. He goes past one, and another. He's through on a goal. The fans are on their feet. He must score. I do a 360-degree spin around the corner and run straight into a group of people. The force knocks me over, and I struggle to get back to my feet. Hey, watch where you're going, kid. A jet of red saliva hits the ground beside me. Little pink bubbles squirm and burst on the surface. Little Lazaro, a familiar voice says. A big bejeweled hand reaches down and pulls me up by my t-shirt. I look from the dragon's smirking face to the three brothers behind him. I recognize two of them from the dragon's house, and the third must be the chief inspector, judging by his uniform. The dragon releases my shirt and turns to the chief inspector. This is the kid I was telling you about, the one who works at the factory but is going to be a famous footballer one day. They all laugh loudly, showing off their little red teeth. One of them has his foot resting on my football. I gulp. Now they'll be making me pay for failing to steal the boots. What are you doing out here on your own? The chief inspector asks. I hope you're not up to no good again. He smirks as he chews his siddy. Then he spits at my feet. Hey, boys, the dragon says, pass the ball to me. The men spread around me and pass the ball with big clumsy kicks. Try and get it off us, little Lazaro. The dragon's clan are really terrible at football. They make grunting noises whenever the ball comes near them. It doesn't take long for one of them to pass it too close to me, and I stick my leg out and pick it up. That's a handball, Bayou shouts. You cheated. He makes a move towards me, but the dragon holds up his hand. Leave it, the dragon says. Be nice to little Lazaro. He's a good boy, after all. The dragon holds my chin in his hand and smiles. Then he pats me lightly on the cheek. Come on, let's go. The brothers walk around me, but Bayou grabs the ball as he passes and kicks it far down the street. His brothers laugh as I run after it. Hey, little Lazaro, boys shouts. My son loves his boots. He says he's going to be a footballer when he grows up, just like you. The men's laughter echoes between the buildings long after they've disappeared from sight. I pick my football out of the gutter and try to make sense of what I just heard. I stand still for a long time before I understand. And it's only then that I realize how Roshi knew the girl wasn't a thief.